Hey everyone, please come on in. We're about to do a fireside chat on Android with this lovely panel. Please give them a warm hand. We have spent years and years of practice and training and engineering work that all led to this point. So we're extremely well prepared for this. And so you know what's going on, who's basically knows which parts the best. I would like the panelists to introduce themselves, starting over this side with Ran.
Let's see. Okay, great. See there. Hello everyone. My name is Ran, and I'm a developer relations engineer, like the rest of us here on Android. I focus on form factors, so any questions around large screen devices, Wear OS, stuff like that.
Hello everyone, my name is Andrei, and I'm not a developer relations engineer like the rest of us. I work on Compose, and I can answer questions about, I think, like everything that correlated, lazy related, runtime compilers, or performance maybe, but Jossi sometimes knows better.
Only sometimes. Hi everybody, I'm Jossi. I'm a software engineer working on Java Compose. I focus on foundation APIs with a focus on draggable things, some material things. I've been working on some material 2 APIs, dragging, scrolling, everything around that.
Hi everyone, my name is Jolanda Verhoef. I am a developer relations engineer on Compose. So everything that is basically something that's not too technical, I would be super happy to pick up. So no lazy, no.
Didn't you just give a very technical talk yesterday morning?
I did, yeah.
So kind of rolling back, all the things that are not covered by Andrei or Jossi, Jolanda has a very good grasp on that. So
yeah, layouts, material,
yeah,
basically,
and like
state management.
touch gestures, state management. There's a lot of things that we cover on Compose, and we know that Compose is such a big topic. That's why we brought not one but 3 experts on different areas in different layers of that, because it's a layer cake that we're working with here.
Hi, my name is Márton. I am a developer relations engineer, and I do Kotlin stuff. So ask me about KSP, maybe K2. Please stop using capt. And if you are still using it, find me afterwards and let me know why.
Hi, I'm Ben. I'm your host, and I've been standing all day, so I'll sit down with the rest. I will also be able to talk about app performance, all sorts of things there that are runtime related. And I've been doing a lot of things throughout the years, so we'll try and get all your questions. There's a microphone here, a microphone there, and I think a microphone there. Please queue up. If there's no questions being asked, then this will be a very short session. No worries, we won't see you because the lights are really bright, so we'll just hear you and probably look in the right direction, but we won't recognize you, so feel free to pretend you're anonymous with this.
We had many talks about Kotlin multi-platform, including one about running Compose on iOS device. And we also had here the Flutter conference. So we see now 2 tools. One of them is created by Google, another one is supported by Google. What are your guesses for the future of multi-platform development?
I think I can take that one from a Compose perspective at least. The one thing that we focus on right now with Compose as Google is to make Compose the best we can for Android. So we are really, really focused on making sure that this is completely ready for everyone to use on the various form factors. And yes, we support JetBrains, but that doesn't mean that we completely endorse that whole project. They're doing it. We're super supportive, and we help them or we work together. But we do see that currently for cross-platform, Flutter is a really good approach. And so basically it depends on what your business needs. If you want this cross-platform right now, Flutter is your go-to. But for native Android development, Compose is really what we aim for, and that is what you should be using.
Next question?
Yes, please, next question.
All right, my question is about navigation of focus. So I think focus management is done pretty well for like TV OS, where you can tag composables as being the next to be focused in any of the 4 directions. And if you read the documentation, it also states that take care that this has nothing to do with talkback focus. And now I'm wondering, how do I make my title of my screen the first to be read out by talkback instead of always the back button?
I think I can take, sorry, or yeah?
Yeah, sure.
Basically, what we want for talkback, because indeed there are 2 different systems. Talkback is a accessibility service that has its own kind of algorithm to decide what order to do, to kind of do focus in, right? And what we want is we want that to work automatically, because a lot of developers do not have the time or the capacity to implement their own kind of focus handling. So what we aim for is that all of that should be going automatically. Now, we have gotten feedback that sometimes it doesn't work the way people expect. So we do ask you, there is a open issue on the issue tracker that is about like doing manual traversal and being able to say, hey, I want this to be the traversal order. We would like you to share your use cases so that we can say, can we not like kind of fine tune that algorithm to make sure that the algorithm works automatically the same way. So it's not just your app being fixed, but everyone's app being fixed. There is still edge cases where you do want that manual, you do want something special in your app that is different from any other app. So we did actually implement that like manual traversal order. So in the latest version of Compose, it is possible to define for accessibility services what you want the focus order to be.
Okay, great. I'll update my dependencies. Thank you.
Hello. So my question is purely design related and more like in the area of like handover from designers to developers. So recently our design team started working on a new design library for our product, which of course, unfortunately, it's not like really material design. So we have to build everything ourselves. But nevertheless, they have decided in Figma to define all the different spacings and everything in the so-called REM format. And we had no clue what this is. And they said, well, it's just 16 pixels. It's one REM. And I'm like, yeah, but we don't even use pixels. So is there any like documentation or best practices or guidelines how to like transfer this REM into like Android's terminology, like DP and SP?
Really good question. I don't have an exact answer for you, but there's a tool that we've been working on recently, Relay, and I also know that Figma has announced some stuff for handover recently, and it integrates with Jetpack Compose, so I recommend you to check that out, unless anybody has another exact answer.
From what I mostly know, majority of the companies that have custom design systems kind of roll their own tools, or like write some components by hand and then just combine the screens from these custom components already, like from pre-built ones. But I don't think it's exact answer that you seek here. So it's yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Nevertheless.
There's a microphone, by the way, left and right as well, so you can queue up there. Please bring your questions forward. We have knowledge a lot about Compose, but about other areas as well. So if you want to hear things on different form factors, on questions on that, wearable devices, foldable devices, things like that, image generation as well. What you just said?
No, I said window manager.
Oh, window management and like a lot of different things, camera as well, bundling, delivery of apps, all things Kotlin, including coroutines, including compilers, all these things, but also Compose, obviously, because we've got 3 Compose experts here as well. Please come, feel free to come forward with that. And things, if you have a question where there's a follow-up needed, like the bug that you just shared, that there's this bug where we want the use case, we're around for the rest of the conference as well. So flag us down, talk with us about this. Jolanda will help you find the bug by title in that case. I'm sorry for throwing you under the bus with that, but because you mentioned it, that's what. Sorry for keeping you waiting. Thank you.
Yeah, hi guys. My name is Sergey. So my question is a little outside of the Kotlin, a little bit. We have this year also a Flutter conference here, and as a concerned Kotlin developer, I'm wondering, like, should I try to look into Flutter and maybe switch into working with Dart? The question is, in a universe where Google successfully launches Fuchsia and it works really well, how are the chances of us continuing to working with Kotlin on top of Java, Kotlin on top of native, which would be really awesome, or just Kotlin being dropped and we were forced to work with Dart? So that's like the question.
There's a lot of ifs in that. It almost sounds like a machine learning model. If statements all the way down. I'm sorry. The real answer is this sounds like a universe that's not the universe that we live in, and very hypothetical to me. We have invested heavily in working with Kotlin on Android as the main language, and that shift has been very well received. Making the switch in the first place to Kotlin as the first language to develop Android apps in was a very deliberate step that has been made not lightly, so I don't see us doing changes there in this universe.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I would say the same thing to that. So basically evaluate these technologies as they are today and determine how much you want to learn about them and invest into them. Because yeah, it was a very hypothetical scenario. And also we can't comment on future things.
Yeah, we had to say that once at least for every panel. But I think like for Flutter, for a cross-platform side, for Dart that they're using as a language, that's the choice of that team, of what they're doing there, of all the things that we're doing. We're Google, we're a big company. We do a lot of things, we experiment with a lot of things, we productionize a lot of things, and we want to help you as developers to do the best work that you can. And we see that with the choices that the teams individually make and we as a company make, we try and do the best that we can with that.
Okay.
Thanks for the question.
Hi. I wanted to know if you would write a new app today using JPEG Compose, would you still use fragments? Maybe it's documented by now, but I'm not sure. I just worked on a project like when Compose was coming out, was pretty new, and then it was not, and there was no official, basically, best practice, so maybe you can answer that.
Our current guidance is that if you start a completely new project from scratch, greenfield, do it 100% compose, no fragments, no activities. Or at least what we say is per kind of entrance to your app, you should just have that single activity. So we have a navigation library, a navigation compose, and you can use that to navigate from screen to screen and to navigate within your app. And that is kind of the way forward. However, if you do have already existing code, it is really hard to kind of, we don't have an option basically to do your navigation in both fragments and in composables. So that navigation basically is the kind of the last step of your migration. So you'd first migrate every single screen, and only when everything is kind of migrated to compose, then you would change from your fragment-based navigation to the compose-based. Thanks.
Let's go this side and then this, please.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm using Jetpack Compose for a pet project, and I really like using it so far. But I've encountered two issues. One issue is with hoisting. Especially as I move up in the view hierarchy, things can get a bit big parameter-wise, especially when I come to like adding some click listeners or some actions that I want to handle. And the other point that I'm experiencing is modifiers, and that I just start chaining stuff, and it can get very long. How can I improve in that regard?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I just like spaced out.
Okay, so there were two things,
I can try and
right?
paraphrase it.
I'm sorry.
I can try and paraphrase it. So the one is state hoisting can be a bit complicated at times. Do we have any recommendation to make that easier? And modifiers is a thing that you're struggling with at some points. Is that right?
It's just getting a lot. Like I have my composable, and then I add modifiers, and I can get very long chains. So how can I break down on that?
Yeah. Okay. So I can answer for the second part for sure. And the simple a simple answer here is to extract those modifiers. You can just like extract them in a separate extension function that you can chain those modifiers to, or you could also like figure out like how to extract this composable wrapper into something that can kind of, for example, creates a column with many modifiers in there, so you have like all of them in the same space if you want them to be there. So it's like simple kind of refactoring that you can usually do with the Kotlin tools in there. For this first thing, it's a bit more complicated, I think. Does anyone have that?
State hoisting first, yeah. For state hoisting, I do get your problem. What I can recommend is we have quite a big hero sample now in Android that you might have heard of. And it's an open source sample which kind of reflects a real world situation. And it is basically our kind of best practice, best guidance that we can give on using Compose in kind of larger apps. So I would definitely say take a look at that. We do still recommend the kind of property drilling, so passing your callbacks forward, even though it can become a bit bigger if your screen gets bigger. But that is the best way to kind of be super clear about, you know, what that specific composable is doing. So I think that's the most I want to say about hoisting. For modifier order, the only thing I want to say is if you're like wondering about the specific order and like how does the first affect the last one.
Sometimes, yeah.
There is a very nice YouTube video on that. It's called Constraints and Modifier Order. 8 minutes tells you everything about modifier order and how they impact each other.
I'm saying Jolanda is in it as well, I think.
I do have some additional points about kind of like complex code, and you're saying your state hoisting, and sometimes just code gets a little too complex, and same for modifiers where you might have just a lot of modifiers in one place. This kind of sounds like to me it's worth investigating how your components look like and whether it kind of like makes sense to break them down a bit more, right? Anytime you have whatever, like 5 or 10 modifiers or any arbitrary number, right? But anytime you look at your code and you're like, this is a lot of modifiers, that's kind of like a really, really good indicator your code is just doing too much. Like maybe if you have a component where you're receiving touch input and then you're influencing how the component is drawn and like setting the background, makes sense probably to kind of like go and split that out or abstract into another modifier and kind of like group them by responsibility, right? You might have like 2 or 3 different draw modifiers. You could group that, and then you could group everything kind of like touch related into one. And similarly, I would ask, why is it bad to have a lot of parameters on your composable functions? I'm not saying you should strive for having 20,000 parameters on your composable functions, A, because that's not possible, B, just because it depends on how complex the composable is, right? So say you have one composable that has 5 parameters, and your concern is about the call site, so where you call that composable, where you pass all those parameters in. Now, if that call site is fairly simple and isn't really complex, doesn't do a whole bunch of stuff, then there is not a lot of harm in having, say, 5 or 8 or 10 parameters. So it's always worth looking at the complexity of your code, both for modifiers and for hoisted state.
Thanks. Thanks for the question. If you have more, you heard him speak, you heard him say, like, answer other questions. If you want to drill deeper, I think let's take it for after the presentation over the next day as well. I think I've seen you standing for a while, so let's go over this side and then here. Please do continue lining up. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi. First of all, thank you for your excellent talks. And I still learn a lot from you guys, particularly all your Medium articles. And I was wondering, you've been working with Compose for a while now. What would you like to see in the future in it?
What would we like to see? What?
What would we like to see in the future?
Yeah,
for
you guys,
Compose?
exactly. Like
we would like to see all of you use Compose in production.
Fair enough.
Your applications. That would be really cool.
But I was more thinking like what kind of features you're still missing that you would like to see, that, I don't know, that you were like testing out and thinking, okay, this was missing, I had to work around a little bit. So, or, I don't know, some futures insights maybe. Or is everything already there and you're like...
I mean, I wanted to say I just built a new API that we published in 1.6 Alpha 01. So I would like everybody in this room to take out their computers, try that API and give me feedback. But I do think that Andrei probably, I think you might have some points about like the Compose and Kotlin compiler, if you're comfortable talking about that.
Can I, before we go into that deep there, I think one part of that is we have roadmaps out there for Compose, what we're doing in the future, things that we've got planned that we publicly talk about. Also, the development is in the open, so you can look into the source code. We have libraries out there. We've seen libraries being developed in the community as well. There's a lot of things that are happening. There's also things that, well, they're just not there yet because it's an evolving thing. It's an evolving system. And one of the really cool things about Compose is it's unbundled from the Android framework. So whether we add this feature today, which is impacting the current newest Android version, or if you're implementing a feature in a year, you still will be able to use that for older Android versions as well. So if you have things that you want to see, we have the issue tracker, we file them on there. Please be really excited to see all that there.
I would like to add one thing to that.
Please.
So you mentioned the issue tracker. I know it's quite kind of a daunting thing to look at. I know. But do know that there is this beautiful button at the top of every bug, of every issue that's in there, and it says +1. And that +1 button is really important. So when we see that, you know, a lot of people from the community are saying that they're having an issue with something, that to us is a signal, because of course we cannot continuously test and see everything that's going on. So the +1, you know, if you have anything that is actually affecting you, please use that button so that we get a good sense of where the issues still lie.
Are you saying we're not supposed to go on the issues and comment +1 for each of them? No, we're not supposed to do that?
We do
get
see
an
both.
email every time.
I know.
We do see both, but the main thing about that is it helps us prioritize. Really, the issue tracker is not a void that you shout into, but we read that, the product owners, product managers go through these issues, and the +1s that are on there, they are very clear signal to us to see this is important. This is not just affecting one single person. I think we move on to the next. Can we?
I just wanted to add a little bit on the what I would like to kind of add about Kotlin compiler and Compose. Sorry, I just spaced out a little bit. So the Kotlin compiler 1.9, as you know, is like 1.9 is almost 2, and K2 is the new version of the Kotlin compiler with new support for the new front end, like new architecture, it's faster, and everything is a big rewrite from the JetBrains team as well. And we try to support it with the Compose compiler as well. So right now, I think today they released in 1.9 with experimental K2 support. And soon, well, hopefully within a few weeks, I just published the dev version, but within a few weeks, we're also going to release like 1.5. And that's also going to have support for the K2 experimentally. And what I'd love you to do is to go there, try the K2 compiler on the big projects with many interesting code patterns, and see if you can break it in many, many ways, and then report it how you've broken it.
Accepted.
Yes.
+1. Please try that once it's out.
I love that comment. Can we move on?
Hi. So coming back to the topic of, let's say, property drilling, there is this tool, composition locals, which other declarative frameworks kind of have this as an approach that they offer as an opinion, well, as an alternative. It seems on the Compose documentation, it's kind of frowned upon as an alternative towards structuring your state architecture, like basically towards sharing data down the tree. And I'm wondering why that is, or if it's still something we should consider, but kind of at owner's risk, or if there's some other reason as to just, no, don't do this, just focus rather on drilling properties through.
So there is like, when I think about composition locals and properties, there are like two things I usually consider. One, is the composition local, the thing that you want to put in composition local, like really important for the most of the tree? Like, is it always there? Is it supposed to be maybe like customized somehow for the subtree or something like that? And if it is, you can kind of move it to composition local because it's kind of static value, you don't have to propagate it all the time. But then there is also the other thing, like same with data dependency. Like you want to show information about profile, you need the data dependency of profile. So if it's kind of required to be there, and there is no meaningful default, because user cannot have meaningful default, you cannot show like some kind of empty picture, so it's not the desired user experience in most cases. For that, I would recommend to propagate it directly as a parameter. So it's like, it's basically a question of, is this thing has a meaningful default or it's required to be there? It's kind of that. That's how I usually think about this. And in many ways, as you mentioned, the similar thing happens in the different declarative frameworks. Like React has the context with exactly the same idea. And I think we try to approach it really similarly, but just with different naming.
Cool.
Thank you. Let's go over here, please.
Hi. Yeah, one question regarding live data. So we use live data objects in view models when we use like view binding with fragments and so on to keep our states. Now with Compose, we migrated most of that to states so that it can actually be used by Compose directly. Do you have a guidance on when to use live data nowadays compared to states, which are usually kept in the view model? And then also there's also flow on when to use what as an official guidance.
Yes. We have guidance on that. I'm pretty sure. I don't know it from the top of my head. I wouldn't be able to give that whole documentation page right now, but there is documentation, and there's quite a few talks on this as well from colleagues of mine. I think Manuel Vivo did some talks, Alejandra Stamato. The MAT team basically has quite a lot of like both blog posts, they have documentation pages and videos on these specific topics. So I wouldn't be comfortable enough sharing with you exactly the details right now.
Okay.
But I can try to help you
that.
find them after the panel if you want.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's covered by like a page on state production. That's what I would look for. And it covers like different ways you can produce into Compose state or into state flows. I think live data is probably not on there at this point. Like if you're in Kotlin and working with Compose and coroutines, there's probably no need for that. But if you have existing code, or if you need to still write Java somewhere for some reason, then live data should still continue to work. So that's an option.
I think that's another big part. It will continue to work, but we have recommendations going forward. And there's also interoperability to some extent that we have guidance on as well. And if you want more direct, we can talk about it later on as well. Let's go to Mil, please.
Will we ever get box shadow and blur features in Compose Foundation? And could you share some plans and concerns and issues regarding these APIs?
Excuse me, could you repeat which APIs you were referring to?
Box shadow and...
I heard it, like I heard shadow and I was like...
okay,
and
cool.
And blur.
Thank you.
So basically being able to give a shadow to any composable, right, is the idea, yeah. So there is an open issue that you probably have seen, I think, in our issue tracker. Yeah, +1 it.
I already
we have, yeah, very good, very good. So we have a lot of people asking for this because, you know, there is a lot of designers that are creating these kind of shadows, and the kind of material elevation concept doesn't always map the way designers want. We are listening and we see that this is a highly demanded feature. The issue with it is that it's also a really complex thing to do, and that's because whenever we add anything to Compose as a library, it needs to work on all the devices, all of the versions up until 21, low end to high end, etc. So Shadow specifically, because there's so many different kind of rendering engines throughout those API levels, is quite a difficult one to get right. And so we're trying to understand really well what is the actual requirement, what do people needs, and how can we create a system that actually works for all of the needs and not only the very basic ones. So we're very hesitant to kind of add an API only to say 2 years from now, hey, it doesn't cover these 5 use cases, we have to revisit the whole API. That being said, we are very aware that this is like one of the big demands and looking into it, of course.
Yeah, I do want to say the graphics team has been discussing this recently. This is not a promise that we'll have an API for it at some point, but the graphics team has definitely been discussing it actively, thinking about what possible solutions are. And just to kind of like add to Jolanda's answer, one of the really important things, of course, for us is performance. And anytime you do something like shadows, blurring, it's really, really important to get right and really hard to get right with performance, especially on low-end devices, which is one of the things that we've been thinking about.
Thanks for the questions and the answers. Let's move on, please.
Are there any plans to improve the Compose navigation So like there are some issues like the roots are strings, which basically lets you pass any string as parameter. For example, if you have many navigation graphs, maybe you would like to have sealed classes for the navigation destinations. I think also you cannot really navigate within modal bottom sheets with the compose navigation. So there is a library which is called Navigation Destinations, an open source library. So are there plans to improve it as a first-party solution, or should we rely on libraries?
I don't think there's a lot we can say about the future and what we will approve or what we will endorse or not. I'm not so sure about that, but we are actively working on safe arcs, so to be able to kind of pass that kind of not having to have that string, but have a bit more security in that sense. There is on our public roadmap, we do have the navigation library as well, so keep that kind of roadmap or look at that public roadmap because it will tell you what we're currently focusing on and what's in our backlog. And if something's really missing, go to the issue tracker +1, I'm sorry.
For bottom sheets and navigation, we do have an accompanist integration for material 2 bottom sheets and the navigation library. We've improved that recently and fixed a ton of issues that I know people were having. And I also have a draft pull request up for an M3 version. Just a little more context on what's holding that back from becoming an official Android X library at some point is that the modal bottom sheet APIs both for M2 and M3 are still experimental. We're working very hard on stabilizing these APIs. And as soon as they're stable, we're going to put some effort in to have a Android X library and solution for bottom sheets. But in the meantime, github.com/google/accompanist is where you want to go. Check out those libraries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi, my name is Dima. So our team adopts Compose since 1.0, and we implemented our own design system just based on foundation library, so it's worked super well, thank you. Yeah, so my question is about performance. So currently, collections immutability is rely on Kotlin X immutable library, yeah, that is experimental, but we have some stable libraries like Guava with immutable collections, and also there is Android Jetpacks collection library where this all can be implemented also. So yeah, why Kotlin X was chosen. And also Google also actively adopts Compose in their own apps. So maybe there is some recommendation of handling some real complex application states, maybe like Redux, yeah, adoption or so on, when we can have some big immutable states with history, with navigation through states, with observing some state leaf, yeah, and so on. And one small question not related to Compose, yeah, maybe there are some plans to integrate Android Studio to JetBrains Gateway for remote development. I don't know if somebody can answer that. Thank you.
That's a lot of questions. Can we focus on the one that is the most priority and then go from there?
Oh, let's talk about complex state, yeah. So now it's split across compose functions, view models, and so on. Maybe there's some recommendation to handle it.
Do we want to continue? Ask Jolanda anything?
So yeah, we have been chatting before a little bit, so I think the answer I will give you now will be similar to the answer I gave before. Where you let your state live, like does it live in your composables, does it live in a view model, does it live in your database, in memory, etc. That is something that depends a lot on the state that you're keeping. But I think the one thing that you mentioned before was that you were also a little bit concerned about kind of like how big the state becomes, right? And how you mutate it in your view models. And I think there...
Mutate easily, yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah, it's hard to rely when states can mutate in some points, yeah, different points.
Yeah, I think one thing I would say is take a look at now in Android and how they are approaching it, because they do have quite complicated state, and they are like kind of combining flows and making sure that that state gets updated automatically. I think it's still quite readable. Maybe you don't agree, and in that case, you're super free to kind of come up with your own state reduction system or anything. This is what we're recommending right now. It's to use the state flows, combine them in that way, kind of adapt your data in your database so that it gets automatically updated in your UI.
Yeah, and we also can create custom solutions. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go over to this side, please.
Thank you. You talked like about a company's library just a few moments ago. And yeah, it's currently filling some gap between what's been available so far for a long time and what's missing in Compose. And in general, I would like to know if there's like, is it supposed to die when everything gets stable, or like what's the future of the company's library? Or yeah, just a curiosity, like not, yeah.
Jossi, do you want to? The question is, as far as I understood it, is we have the accompanist library. There's a lot of stuff that's in there that's not in Compose. A lot of exciting things in there. Some things are graduating from that. Some things get removed. Like, what's the story? Is there like, what's happening with that?
Yeah, I mean, we use accompanist as kind of like, in a way, our playground, or more professionally, incubator, right? Where we put things when we're not exactly sure where we want to go with them in terms of API, in terms of behavior. For example, Pager is a really good example, right? Where we went from having a version in accompanist to having a version in Foundation that's based on that, but still very, very different. I mean, it uses different internals and so on. And so accompanist really is this thing where we have all of these things that we can try out, we can get feedback. And the goal really, I think we state this in the README, is we want to remove each of those libraries in some way, right? Like, it could be either that the library doesn't need to exist anymore because we built lower level building blocks, for example, in Foundation or even in UI. And now it's much easier to kind of like achieve all of those things. Or we actually end up upstreaming the libraries. We did that with navigation animation recently when the animated content APIs went stable. So the story for now is that we'll have this. We just actually recently, I think 2 weeks ago, 1.5 weeks ago, in collaboration with Microsoft, added a new feature to the accompanist adaptive library. So it's very much there, and we're using it to work with new APIs and get feedback.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the talks and for this QA session. I have a question related to the future of this trend. So Kotlin was introduced as the main programming language for Android. Now it's going multi-platform. Compose was introduced as a declarative UI framework for Android. Now it's going multi-platform. Are you trying to get rid of us? Or are you trying to provide us with best tools to go beyond Android system? And from your perspective, what is the future of this trend? Like in 2 or 3, 5 years, are we going to develop like for iOS, web, and front end using Kotlin multi-platform and other multi-platform tools?
Well, we all work on Android, and we're part of the Android teams that are working on Android with tools and languages that work well on Android. So the trend that I'm seeing is that we're working on Android. And also there's a handful of people doing a handful of different things for different companies, for different platforms, we just have a conference across the hallway to talk about cross-platform. We have Kotlin as a language that we love and use, and we hear developers using that a lot. And I see us working on Android. Oh yeah, that's true. Jossi, this is what Jossi said. It's the Android Fireside chat.
I think that this question is better directed to the JetBrains folks who just look like around the corner. They are really welcome. They also ask you to draw your architecture that you envision in your app or something like that, which is also a really nice activity. But yeah, in general, I think that's the question that JetBrains can answer much better than us, because a lot of things about Kotlin we don't really know as much. We work really closely to them, collaborate on both Kotlin and some Compose stuff as well to kind of make sure that they are both on block and we also on block, because Compose compiler really depends heavily on Kotlin compiler to make sure we work correctly. Yeah, but just go ask them. They probably have a better answer than us.
Okay, I'll do it. Thank you.
Yeah, and so while we collaborate closely and try to not break anything and like try to be nice with all of these things, it's important that like Kotlin was not designed for Android, for example. So like these are not like our initiatives, but you know, if something works, we'll enable it and adopt it as we can.
Thank you.
And please don't leave. We like the Android
I'm
community a lot.
planning to stay and use these tools for other platforms as well, but I will not abandon Android, that's for sure.
Yay!
Thank you.
This microphone hasn't seen a lot of usage, so please ask your question.
Okay, hi guys. So I'm using Compose, and we have a design system, and I am in the team that makes the design system work for the company. I found a bug on the surface with a stroke, and there's an issue open here. And I checked it some time ago, 2022. So, as a person that follow a lot the community, I would like actually not to ask a question, but to suggest for Compose, I feel that would be much more nicer if we had other ways to communicate with you and say these problems. Because from my perspective, I feel that, okay, there's an issue open and long time ago, and I had to do a terrible workaround that I'm not so proud of. But, you know, it was the only way, and I had to adapt using other composables. And I think the community is being very active for Compose. This is my feeling as a company that is already doing, and people are so excited. So, I don't know, do you have any plans like to make Compose more like visible for people reaching out?
I think we have a couple of things here. So one of them is we do things like this, where you can ask questions like this, and you can come up to us, you know, after the talks, after the fireside chats, or find us around the conference, right? And ask those questions. In fact, you're very welcome to be like, hey, I filed this issue half a year ago, and then nothing happened. Did it fall under the table? Because sometimes it happens. We work on a lot of stuff. There's an overall point of like visibility and kind of like progress on things on issue tracker. No, all of these things are on our minds, are on our planning. We get emails on updates on the issues, right? Like if somebody comments on the issue, if somebody files an issue, we get that into our email inboxes, actually, right? So we see that, we see all of that. We just don't get to react to everything straight away, but we do get to kind of like categorize it and keep it in our minds for when we plan all of the work. That being said, I think issue tracker could probably do better in some ways to kind of like communicate like where we're at with like progress, and maybe we could have some more detailed roadmaps. Then there's the other thing of like talking to the Compose team. So there's Kotlin Lang, which has Compose and a Compose Android channel. And I definitely recommend going in there, asking questions, because Googlers are hanging out there and answering questions. And I hope that kind of like helps in some kind of like sort with communication and approaching us. But yeah, we also understand the pain of sometimes just we don't get to an issue for a month or two. And it's very frustrating to not understand why we're not getting to that issue. No, we have reasons internally, and you know we're working on higher priority things, but we understand it's very frustrating.
One thing that I'd like to add is years and years back, before we had Compose, it was really a lot harder to file issues, to talk with Googlers, and one of the reasons why Compose is being developed in the open is we want that contribution, we want this conversation, we want this discourse. We don't want to shy away, we don't want to hide away from the community, but we want to hear what are the problems that you're facing. So you asking this question is really good, because we want to make sure this is available for you. And I think Jossi's explanation was, we're trying our best, and we're just limited in how much time we have during the day, like every other person as well. We're trying to prioritize these things, and the Slack is a great option. Many of us are on different social media platforms as well. We react to things like the different issues on now in Android, in Accompanist, in all the GitHub repositories. We see those things as well. And if things come up and there's a discussion, several monitor Stack Overflow, go through answers, questions there as well. There's a lot of ways, and we really want to be active with that. And we really want to help you to succeed with using the Android APIs. And Compose is a very high surface API where we want you to be as successful as you can by helping through making answers visible to all your questions that you have. So, yeah.
Can I add one more thing? I'm going to talk to you later because I really now want to know what that issue is about. So I'm
I
very
can tell
curious.
you for sure.
You shown up.
Oh, you actually know the issue. Well, there we go.
Yeah, the surface with a white border but a whiter background, and it gets dirty only in this rounded part. Yeah.
Jossi already, I think, is thinking about fixes. So that's great. That we got that covered. But I just wanted to say in general, when you create issues, like what we're saying is like we get a lot of new issues. So every day there's like, I mean, I'm following Stack Overflow questions and I get like an overview every day and it's like 30 per day. That's already a lot. But then for engineering teams, like they have to triage all these different bugs coming in, put them in the right teams, get the engineers to look at them while they're also creating new features, improving performance, etc. So my suggestion would be is when you create an issue, and maybe you did this, I really don't know, but in general, when you create an issue, try to have this kind of small reproducible project that we can just, copy paste a bit of code or like do something simple so that we can see it, or like include a screenshot or something like that. So it's quite visible. That improves the chance for us to look at it.
Oh, this is a very nice tip because I did this for the company, but I didn't post it in the threads with this. So yeah, it's a nice idea. I will do that. I have images to prove.
Thanks. I hope that we have room for the 2 questions that are still lined up. We're trying to be quick in answering them because I know the movie is about to start. But let's please go to the last 2 questions. Thanks for waiting.
Okay, so I have actually 2 questions. One would be like, you have said that we need to use KSP instead of capped. So my first question would be when Dagger will support KSP?
Soon.
So it's this year, not next year, or?
No, I think we can promise this year, but no, it's in snapshot builds, so you can play around with it, but it's not quite released yet. You really should subscribe to the GitHub releases for Dagger. Like that's the best way to tune into it. We can't say when exactly it's gonna ship, but it's gonna ship. There are also some caveats around it. So on the Dagger GitHub page, there's an issue for supporting KSP, and the engineers have communicated there quite recently about the state of things. Like there are some typing changes from going from cap to KSP where types are stronger. So there's going to be some small things to take into account there. But yeah, like soon-ish.
Well, technically, snapshot builds are shipped, so it's.
I mean, yes,
it's not really proven to work and maybe not stable. But if you want to play around with it, you can.
And please tell us if that's broken, because that's very useful.
Yeah, we want to know if there's stuff broken. We can fix that as soon as possible. It makes it faster to ship for you.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for the question.
And another, if possible, another question.
Oh, you know what? We actually have to cut it off there.
All right. Thanks.
Sorry, I'm the meanie who has to cut us off. But we're moving on to the next segment. Thanks. Give a big applause to all of our Googlers here.
Thanks for having us.